So this will go with 9-6 for 8th grade. We're talking about the converse of the Pythagorean theorem. So please take a minute to copy the notes. The converse of a statement switches the hypothesis and the conclusion. So basically, you have a statement. If P, then Q. So the converse of that statement switches those and says, if Q, then P. So the idea here is, even if the statement is true, that doesn't mean that the converse will also be true. It might be true all of the time, some of the time, or never. So here are some examples. So you're going to write the converse of the statement and then tell whether the converse is true, all, sometimes, or none of the time. For example, if the statement is, if I live in California, then I live in the United States. So our P, if I live in California, right, then I live in the United States. Right, that's our statement. The converse would be, if I live in the United States, so notice they've switched that, then I live in California. And that would be true some of the time, because just because you live in the United States doesn't mean you necessarily live in California, although you might. So that's what you're doing on each of these examples for 2 through 4. Go ahead and try them on your own and then check back. So for number 2, if I draw a quadrilateral, then my drawing will have 4 sides. The converse of that, if my drawing has 4 sides, then I have drawn a quadrilateral. Well, that would be true all of the time. For number 3, the converse, if there are puddles, then it is raining outside. That would be true some of the time. Somebody could have thrown a bucket outside, somebody could have washed their car, so it doesn't necessarily mean that it is definitely raining outside. So the converse of that is sometimes true. And finally, for number 4, this is what we're working on today. If I have a right triangle, then a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Then the converse of that would be, if a squared plus b squared equals c squared, then I have a right triangle. That would be true all of the time. So what we're looking at here is, if we're given 3 sides of a triangle, we should be able to decide whether that's a right triangle or not by using the Pythagorean theorem. If the Pythagorean theorem works, then it's a right triangle. If the Pythagorean theorem doesn't work, then it's not a right triangle. So we're first going to start out by putting them in order. A and B have to be the 2 shorter sides. Those are your legs, and then the hypotenuse is always the longest side, so make sure you put them in order. And then you go ahead and calculate that. So if you calculate that, you find that 841 on the left side of the equation does not equal 784, so this is not a right triangle. And so that's what you will do with each of these. Remember, 2 smaller sides are your A and your B. So go ahead and try letter B and letter C and find out if those are right triangles. Pause the video, check back. So if you did those correctly, you should see that B and C would both be right triangles. The last thing we need to look at is whether the coordinates that you're given would form a right triangle. So 2 ways you can figure this out. You can actually do calculate the drawing, or actually make it on a coordinate plane, or figure out the distance of each of the lines. So if we actually graphed it, we're going to do that here. So if I plot those points, A, B, and C, 0, 5 to 8, 5, and then 8, 5 to 8, 10, and then I connect there, I can see that those 2 lines will be perpendicular to each other, A to B and C to B. Therefore, we do have a right triangle. So that's one of the ways you could solve this. The second way is you could actually calculate the distance for each of the lines. So if I take the first 2 points, DE, -1, -4, and -1, 8, I see that those are on a straight line. So that's very easy. I just have to subtract the 2 y coordinates and I'm going to get the distance. But then if I look at E to F, that's -1, 8, and 3, 2. So if I would think about a graph for that, it's not going to be a straight line, which means that I would have to use the Pythagorean theorem to figure it out anyways. And if I try to do D to F,